Hey guys, and welcome back. Welcome back to the new studio here. We're changing things up a little bit. It's a little bit bland right now, but we're going to be changing that up and making it look a little bit nicer. Anyways, to today's video, it's going to be a fun one. It is stinking cold outside right now, but we do have some awesome accessories going on to the Chevy Tahoe. However, I've been wanting to do this video to kind of tell you guys why I bought the 2007 Chevy Tahoe, so I figured a cold day like today would be an awesome way to film something inside. So anyways, today I'm going to be going through all the different vehicles that we considered when shopping for the Chevy Tahoe. And I'm also going to go into all the different categories as well of what kind of were thought about when we were thinking about buying the Chevy Tahoe. So I have all the different vehicles in here in all the different categories, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, so it is a bit of a lengthy list of vehicles that's kind of all over the place, so I'm going to go ahead and read them off so that you guys can hear all the different vehicles we considered. So I'm going to go alphabetical order. We thought about an Acura MDX, a Chevy Avalanche, a Chevy Silverado, a Dodge Durango, Ford Expedition, Ford Explorer, Ford F-150, GMC Sierra, GMC Yukon, as well as the XL version, Honda Ridgeline, Jeep Commander, Kia Sorento, Toyota Tacoma, Honda Pilot, and then, of course, Chevy Tahoe, and even a Chevy Suburban. So that's quite a few different vehicles to think about. Those all can be purchased under that $10,000 price point that we had set for ourselves. And so we just kind of went through all the different categories of what was really, really important to me and important to us to purchase with this SUV, because this is also a personal vehicle. It's not just for the channel, so we wanted to make sure it was something that worked for us as well as for the channel and in our lives. So I'm going to go through each of those categories. I'm going to tell you later on why we decided from each of those categories not to purchase specific vehicles, and we're going to go from that. So these are all the different categories that we were thinking about when shopping for this Chevy Tahoe and how we landed on it. So the first one is going to be value, safety, reliability, additional features, so those just like cool features that come along with it. Size, we wanted a third row. We wanted to have more space. Of course, there's something that's great for the channel because I really wanted to build up a cool vehicle for this channel. I wanted to have something that I hadn't had before. I've had almost, I don't even know how many vehicles at this point. I have a video talking about it up here. And then of course, it's something a little bit easier to drive. Before we had a 2004 Ram 1500, and it's just a little bit difficult to drive, difficult to park, parallel park, that kind of stuff. So we wanted to have something along those lines. So with that said, I'm going to go through each of these categories and tell you why different vehicles that we had talked about earlier in the video did not make it. And we're going to narrow it down and kind of show you my thought process as to why we ended up with the Chevy Tahoe. So first things first is value. So value, obviously, we have set a budget of $10,000. You want to spend that $10,000 in a good way. You want to make sure you're getting a good value, some great, you want to get that blend of reliability, quality, and all that kind of stuff. And there's some fantastic vehicles out there that just aren't a great value, honestly. They may swing to one direction, but not to the other. And you just want to kind of get that middle of the road, honestly, where you get a lot of great features, but you also get that reliability, but you also get the space and that kind of stuff. So value actually knocked out the Toyota Tacoma and the Ford F-150. So both of those vehicles are extremely, extremely great vehicles. Like the Toyota Tacoma just has ridiculous reliability. Honestly, looks really, really great. However, it was knocked out on the value side of stuff. I didn't feel like you could get a new enough vehicle for the price that you want. And then of course the Ford F-150, honestly, just everybody wants one of those. And I found that the pricing just didn't quite make sense to keep it under that $10,000 budget, but still getting a great F-150. So the next thing is safety rating. Safety is very, very important to me, and I wanted to make sure that we had a great vehicle that was safe and great to drive, that you can feel confident in, and that actually knocked out the Honda Pilot. We were interested in a Honda Pilot for a while. It's an awesome vehicle. They're really, really reliable and great vehicles. However, safety rating honestly is not that great. I was super surprised in that. So all the Honda Pilots under $10,000 range just didn't quite get to that safety rating that we were hoping to have. So of course that leads me into reliability. Reliability is a big one. I've had some unreliable vehicles like the Audi A6 that I had for a while. It had just tons of issues. We had an ML320 that was extremely reliable, but when we owned it, it unfortunately had a bunch of issues when it was almost 500,000 miles and stuff like that. So I've had a lot of unreliable vehicles out there, and I just wanted something reliable this time. And so that actually knocked out the the Ford Expedition. Because of the 5.4 liter engine is just terrible, and pretty much all the Expeditions within this price range have that 5.4 liter, and I did not want any form of vehicle that had that engine in it. That also knocked out the Kia Sorento. Under the $10,000 price point, you're kind of getting a little bit of those older Kias, whereas the new Kias I honestly think are fantastic and really reliable and just really great vehicles all around. They have a 100,000 mile warranty. It's just, Kias are just fantastic vehicles nowadays. However, the Kia Sorento within the budget range that we were looking at just didn't quite fit quite right. And then one thing I did not mention is that we decided, you know, I had never actually owned an SUV before, so we decided to go ahead and get an SUV rather than a truck. So that easily knocked out vehicles like the Chevy Avalanche, the GMC Sierra, Chevy Silverado, and the Honda Ridgeline. The Ridgeline I know is an SUV-based truck, but it is still a truck. You're not getting that space, extra space to be able to put stuff into. And I found with my old truck that I wasn't using the bed most of the year. I would use it for, you know, heavy duty things like carrying around rocks, carrying around garbage, all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't enough to offset, you know, just making an SUV work. Whereas an SUV is something that I use more as an SUV than I would a truck as a truck, if that makes sense. So I decided to go ahead and not get a truck, so that knocked out 4 other vehicles. The next thing is additional features. I haven't had that many vehicles with a ton of cool features on them. Most of my vehicles have been a little bit older, so they, you know, kind of didn't have the cool features that ended up being the Chevy Tahoe. If you've seen this video up here, you can see all the cool features that were in that Chevy Tahoe. And just a lot of the vehicles I've had never had that. So that was something that was really important to me, and that actually knocked out the Jeep Commander. We've been wanting a Jeep Commander for years at this point. It's a really cool vehicle, looks really neat. I really want one. However, it just kind of doesn't have that bang for the buck when it comes to features anymore. So, you know, things like the Tahoe, it has the automatic tailgate, it has rain sensing wipers, it has just a lot of cool features that just, you know, the Commander doesn't have. Even though the Commander is really cool and I really, really like it, it's just didn't quite work for those additional features, so that did knock that out. That said, it unfortunately, in the price bracket we are with vehicles now, unfortunately, I don't think I'm ever going to get a Commander. I've always wanted one. I feel like every time we shop for a vehicle, we were looking at Jeep Commanders and just kind of never works out. And unfortunately, I think at this point, I may never own one, and maybe one day we will for the channel, but as of right now, unfortunately, that's just kind of out of the picture, and I'm honestly kind of sad about that, because I think the Jeep Commander is such a unique, cool, large SUV, and I've always wanted to own one. So the next thing is sizing. We wanted a 3rd row vehicle, just, you know, kind of have that extra length of vehicle. We have dogs, and it's awesome to have that extra space that the 3rd row gives, because generally you can fold them down, can put them up, and that kind of stuff. And a 3rd row generally means a little bit larger rear end. It allows the dogs to be comfortable on road trips and that kind of stuff. While we technically don't need a 3rd row vehicle for people side of things, it just is really nice to have. But with that said, it didn't actually knock any vehicles out of the running that currently are on there, just because all of them did have the sizing that we would want. And so we'll move on to the next category. So with that, we wanted more space. So while 3rd row normally does give more space, not every 3rd row vehicle is actually a large vehicle. And with that said, it actually knocked out the Acura MDX. I really actually was seriously considering the MDX. However, this, along with a few other things we're going to talk about a little bit later, did knock it out of the running. They are really cool vehicles with a ton of features. It just is a little bit smaller and is kind of barely a 3rd row vehicle. Even though it does have a 3rd row, there just isn't much space there. So with that said, that leaves us with 5 remaining vehicles that we had knocked it down to, and that is the Dodge Durango, Ford Explorer, GMC Yukon, Chevy Tahoe, and the Chevy Suburban, as well as kind of the GMC Yukon XL, but I'm not considering that's a separate vehicle, it's just a long wheelbase GMC Yukon. So that leaves 5 vehicles that we were looking at, and so we kind of went from there on our shopping. So the next category, honestly, is something that was great for the channel. I really wanted a vehicle that was customizable, and not every vehicle out there is. Like, for example, the Acura MDX that was already kind of knocked out of the running a little bit earlier in this video. They just don't have a ton of customizations and just things that you can do on the channel, like what we ended up with the Chevy Tahoe. Is just the Chevy Tahoe has a ton of customizations. Again, we have customizations and they're ready to go on when it's just not so stinking cold outside. But with that said, that actually did knock out the Dodge Durango, which is actually a vehicle I had already owned before. However, I didn't feel like it was a great vehicle for the channel because there just, again, aren't too many customizations since they switched over from the truck platform to the SUV platform. There just isn't a ton out there for you to be able to do with those vehicles on a channel like this. And that leads me into the next category, which is a vehicle I haven't ever owned before. The Ford Explorer was on my list of vehicles to possibly get for the channel because there are actually quite a few customizations for that vehicle. However, it is something we've owned before. In fact, we've owned 2 Ford Explorers of the generation that would fit within this budget. So it just wasn't something I wanted to have. And we actually currently own another Ford Explorer. Again, I'll show the video up here of the Ford Explorer we do own. However, that one really isn't meant for the channel. It isn't something I really want to have as a project. So we decided not to get a second Ford Explorer because it just didn't quite make sense for us. That said, they are fantastic vehicles and I really do like Ford Explorers. And the last category is something easy to drive. So we wanted a larger vehicle. However, we wanted something that was easy to drive. So that actually knocked out the Chevy Suburban and again, the GMC Yukon XL. They're just too long, even though they give us a lot of that extra space that I wanted. And honestly, it would be a lot of fun on this channel. We wanted something that's easy to park downtown, something that is just, easy to drive, a little bit more sporty and that kind of stuff. And those vehicles just didn't really fit that. So with that did knock out the GMC Yukon XL and the Chevy Suburban. And if you've been paying attention, that leaves us with 2 vehicles. And that is the GMC Yukon Standard, the short wheelbase version, as well as the Chevy Tahoe, which of course is what we ended up on. I honestly was happy with either one of those. I think they're both fantastic vehicles. We were looking at like the GMC Yukon Denali, the Chevy Tahoe LTZ, which is what we ended up with. I looked at a bunch of different ones and we finally landed on the Chevy Tahoe LTZ because it had a great mixture of features. It was a really good value. We found it at a dealership that just really put their work into it and did a lot of things, including getting rid of the air ride suspension and replacing it with a passive suspension, which was really, really nice. It was a $1,700 to $2,400 job that they did before we ever purchased it. So it allowed me to have all those features that I wanted, like all the automatic features, climate control, all that kind of stuff, including leather, that normally you would have to have with a Chevy Tahoe that has air ride suspension. They went ahead and bypassed that and replaced it with a passive suspension. And so, hey, I would have been happy with either one of those, the GMC Yukon or the Chevy Tahoe. However, we ended up with the Chevy Tahoe, and that is the build you see today. Anyway, so that is my thought process through how we've narrowed down so many different vehicles down to these 2 and ultimately the Chevy Tahoe that we ended up with. So with that said, that is our thought process when we were narrowing down from so many different vehicles ranging in so many different stuff, including trucks, small SUVs, well, not small SUVs, but smaller SUVs and truck-based SUVs and that kind of stuff. So we used all those different categories to decide on the Chevy Tahoe. I hope it helps you out with how you think about buying an SUV or buying any vehicle whatsoever, so that maybe you can take those categories yourself and help you with any budget of deciding what works best for you. So with that said, make sure to like and subscribe. You guys have been doing an awesome job on liking, because the liking the videos does make it so that the YouTube algorithm does show it to other people on the platform, and we're getting a ton more views on our videos. Make sure to subscribe because it does kind of work as a bookmark, and make sure that you are notified whenever a new video of ours comes out. And you want to make sure to do that because we have a lot of awesome accessories that are going on the Chevy Tahoe, and we're going to be building it up over the coming weeks, and I'm really excited to share that with you guys. So anyways, have a great one, and I look forward to see you guys on the next video.